Congressman Andy Biggs. Congressman, how you holding up there?
I'm holding up good enough. Good enough, Jeff.
Yeah,
good
it's
enough. How about yourself?
Well, I sense a real tipping point here, Congressman. And let's start with this, because I think people are really scared about their loss of their constitutional rights. And they feel like, there's some rogue governors out there. I've been calling them some mini tyrants around the country that are really ruling by executive order. People are nervous about the loss of their freedoms. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, this is a real problem right now, because it is the very essence of who we are as Americans. And when we said we recognize constitutional rights, we didn't say except for when there's a situation that we're concerned about. I mean, look, these people that are doing this, a lot of them are making executive orders, and I don't know where they think they get the authority to abrogate constitutional rights. Why are they not at least going through the normal legislative process? And I would suspect at some point you're going to see lawsuits. You're going to see cases that come out. There was a case where the judge, this is the Louisville case, where the mayor was trying to prevent people from worshiping in a drive-through service, for Pete's sakes, and that was tossed. And so this is what you're seeing is an overreach by government in some places, and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, Congressman, do you think people are waking up? Because we've been in this coronavirus crisis now for a few weeks. And, I noticed at the beginning of this, I had to turn off social media, Facebook and Twitter, because if I were to even question something that a representative, a governor, or whoever, a mayor was doing, it was like, how dare you question them in this dangerous times? And, we're all about to die, and you cannot question them. But over the past week and really the past 2 days, it seems like more and more people are starting to voice their opinion. Are you seeing that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, look. So the op-eds that I wrote last week that got published last week about constitutional rights and opening up the government, I had actually had versions of those written the week before, as I began to observe the violation of our rights. But like you, every time I mentioned anything like it, people would just absolutely, they would go freak out on me, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was like, well, okay, so when are they going to feel like they should exercise their rights? And I think middle of last week is where we really saw that start to happen. And now I think the floodgates are open. There are people protesting all over the country. They want to open. People like to work. They want to work. And there's a way to do this and still take care of the most vulnerable population in our society.
Yeah, Congressman, they would say things like, and I'm just pulling one from what I've seen frequently on social media, Congressman Biggs, how dare you say that? You want people to die? You want to trade the economy for people's lives? I mean, that's the kind of stuff I'm seeing all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I've been accused of a lot of stuff, but certainly that's one. And the reason I make the statements I make is because I love people. Mm-hmm. I trust people. And the reality is, if you basically force people to go into poverty, you have a far more broad and well dispersed opportunity, and I'm just using the opportunity as kind of a tongue in cheek, to really impact people's health in a negative way. That's what happens with poverty. That's what happens with the stress of losing your employment. That's what happens with the problems of sheltering in place. That's what happens when people lose their life savings and capital is wiped out, when people's retirement counts are wiped out. You actually put stress on them in a way that produces bad health and bad decisions and inability to actually get the care that you need to get.
Yeah, and Congressman Biggs, I mean, I'm pretty thick-skinned, and I kind of hit my breaking point this weekend where I was just like, I'm done with this. I'm so tired of dealing with this, and I'm pretty flexible. I'm self-employed. But I've even reached my point where I'm just like, oh, this just stinks. Where's our country going? And I think that when times are tough like this, you have to question your elected representatives and folks making decisions. You have to voice those concerns, because if we all rode the same direction off the cliff or the falls, what good is it? Questioning things is a good thing. It's the basis of our democracy, of our republic, our representative republic.
No, that's exactly right. You remember? Well, you're too young to remember probably, but back when I was a kid and there was the hippie generation and everything, they all wore T-shirts that were tie-dyed. But when they weren't tie-dyed, they would say things like question authority.
Yeah.
Those people now have authority. A lot of them are elected officials in the blue states, and they don't want anyone to question their authority. They want to trample on rights and basically reign as tyrants. And that's the problem. We're supposed to govern. When you're elected in America, you're supposed to govern, and you receive authority to govern. You don't have power. You receive authority and permission to govern from the elected. When you're not doing that, when you're doing what I'm seeing in places like New York, Pennsylvania, California, Oregon, some of the other places, what you're doing is you are reigning, you are ruling, and that is exactly the opposite of what we are and who we are as Americans.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of, I've been calling them kings, and a lot of cities, their mayors have become mini kingdoms. Look, we broadcast out of Flagstaff. We broadcast all over Arizona, but out of Flagstaff, we've been dealing with an even stricter enforcement of things than even the rest of the state. But you've got kind of mayors that have gone rogue. Look, I got to be honest with you. I mean, I'm glad I'm not in some of these blue liberal states because they've gone so far, but we've got to be honest that there are also certain Republican governors who have clamped down pretty hard. Although I'll take Arizona over California and the restrictions we have here any day.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, it's real easy. I mean, when somebody thinks that they have power, it's real easy to kind of abuse that power. But the reality is, you don't have power. We've got authority to act. That's a huge difference. And I'm hoping we get it back. I mean, hopefully it's just during this period of fear and crisis, and then we get it back. But I'm afraid that every time you erode rights, it becomes very difficult to get them back, get them fully restored to where they ought to be.
Yeah. You give some and you give back some, but you never get all of them back, and it's a constant erosion. All right, so Congressman Biggs, I mean, people want to get back to work. I usually start off all these interviews by saying, look, I understand the virus is serious. It's not to diminish those facts and that reality. It's a lot more serious than I thought it would ever get. But what we know now, a month later versus what we knew then, people are covering their face or wearing gloves or whatever. Although I see people driving down the road with their gloves, and I'm kind of questioning that. But anyway, people socially distance, and they're doing better practicing, washing their hands, things like that. Can't people make a decision how to viably and practically and in a smart way open their businesses? I mean, how is government, who's gotten us into so many messes, going to tell these business owners how to do it better?
Well, you make a great point. First of all, government is a bunch of people, and so it makes a bunch of mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, I keep using this example. I think it's really important. We somehow manage to go to grocery stores and socially distance and act as responsible human beings when we're grocery stores. Why wouldn't we think that we as Americans, seeing what's going on, can't be responsible and exercise our choice in a way that's responsible and respectful of the risk of spreading this virus? Open up these other stores. I go to pick up food at the restaurant. I stand in line. There's a little tape on the floor, and it's all at least 6 feet apart, but most of us are standing further than 6 feet apart. The idea is, I don't think that Americans are incapable of making these decisions. And if you want to preserve freedom, then you have to basically understand that there will always be some risk to freedom. We don't want people passing these germs around and creating a public health crisis. But at the same time, you have to recognize that there's a need to preserve the economic viability of this country, because without the economic viability, you will actually exacerbate public health issues.
Oh, it's going to be hard. And I've been hitting on the economic side of this more than the virus side, because we have got, look, I spent a lot of time talking with you over the past year and some of your colleagues over the past several years and other folks about the dire condition that our country is in as far as the national debt. We were already at $1 trillion federal deficit, and I saw reports now we might be heading to $4 trillion with all this. The Fed's pumping money in and really destroying the dollar. Let's talk about the stimulus package. I think you were one of the voices that was not too thrilled with stimulus number 3. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, no, I voted no on that. I was one of 5 people who voted no. Yes, correct.
We actually know this because you guys did like a magical yelling into the air thing. So we have a record of this.
Well,
huh?
Well, yeah, because what happened is it was a voice vote, and there'll be a voice vote on Friday, by the way. But it was a voice vote, and I voted no. But I know everybody who voted no because they talked to me about it. And then I also, you could have a form to fill out to go to the congressional record, and so I filled that out. And then I also did a 5-page explanation of the problems of that. And I could have probably written a book about the problems with that last bill, but I didn't. I just put in, like kind of the lowlights of it.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, Jeff, because you touched on this, and you're exactly right. Over $1 trillion structural deficit at in March. That's with 6 months left to go in the normal fiscal year. So if all other things being equal, I would have anticipated somewhere at $1.3 trillion. So add that 1.3, add it to the 2.2, add it to the $500 billion from the Phase 2 package, and you see that you're going to be well over $4 trillion structural deficit this year, and you're going to be adding, because of the way this is going to be pushed out, you're going to be adding an additional trillion or so to the next year's structural deficit, and that's not counting the PPP program that's going to be voted on this Friday, which is going to be probably $500 billion, something like that. It's not counting a Phase 4, which they're talking about anywhere from $2 to $5 trillion, or a Phase 5 that they're talking about, which is going to be a couple $1 trillion. So you begin to see that you could really turn yourself upside down with your debt to GDP ratio. And that is, and you mentioned something else I think people need to understand. In order to keep things liquid, the Fed has put out almost $6 trillion over the last 3 weeks that's coming into our economy.
Wow.
And that does to provide liquidity. Now, you do want to provide liquidity when you're in a depression. That can mitigate the damage. But the thing you have to realize is when you do that, you devalue your currency. When you devalue your currency, that is what inflation is. And so that's, imagine an inflationary pressure with a kind of a pressure on a negative growth depression type of atmosphere, and you have the potential for some very serious economic ramifications downstream.
Yeah, and I don't think people correlate a lot of this. It can get pretty complicated, but I had investor Jim Rogers on from Singapore last week, which I was really excited to have him on, and we talked about this and how the U.S. is devaluing its currency, and I don't think people realize. My listeners do, because they've been, they know this stuff, but most people out there don't realize that we're the reserve currency. But there are places like Russia, China, other places that would love to see us knocked off that peg, and we're helping this along. And could you imagine how bad it'll get if we lose that special status of reserve currency, if we print ourselves to infinity? Yeah, no, that is exactly. The one thing that has saved us, Jeff, so far has been that we are the international currency and international reserve currency, and because of that, we've been able to sustain ourselves. The previous administration, not the Trump administration, the previous 2 administrations were really lousy on this, but they weren't as lousy as Congress has been lately. So and don't forget too, you have basically functionally a 0% interest prime rate right now. Yeah. And I know that the Fed keeps saying, well, yeah, we've got additional tools in our toolbox. Well, the number one tool that they're going to use is to print more currency. And when you do that, that's devaluing. And by the way, Jim Rogers is really a great investor. I've read half a dozen of his books. Fantastic, very interesting fellow. Oh, I loved having him on, and we were talking about his investment biker book and Adventure Capitalist. Go check. Yes. I got the interview up at my website, talkwithjeff.com. So go check it out. It was one of the highlights because he's been a kind of a role model to me, and he doesn't have a good outlook because of the stupid things we're doing. And I hate using, because I tell my kids not to use that word, but I can't come up with a better word than a lot of stupid decisions being made repeatedly, and we're expanding it. We're going down a road that just we're compounding the stupid decisions on top of each other. And when do we get past the point of no return here? The numbers you gave me, Congressman, I add up over 30 trillion for the national debt on an $18 trillion economy if we're lucky now.
Yeah, I use the word ill-conceived.
There you go.
And I think a lot of these are ill-conceived because I think the desire is there. I think it's a visceral reaction, but I think just as we took on the public health side, we took a very broad-based approach to it, so where everybody was treated the same instead of treating the vulnerable. And we knew who the vulnerable were when this really started flowing into the U.S. because we saw it in Italy, China, and South Korea before it ever got here. We could have done a much narrower remedy for that. The same thing is kind of going on with these packages coming out of Congress. Instead of tailoring those for short-term bridges to, if you believe in this stuff at all, you could have tailored that to really make it work. But ultimately, you know what makes it work? You know what helps the economy? Is to open it up.
Yeah.
That is what is going to solve your problem. But I mean, you've got people talking about stair-stepping, opening this economy, waiting till November or so till it's all open again.
Oh my God!
Then I can guarantee you. Yeah, by then I can guarantee you it's going to be too late for many businesses to ever reopen.
Yeah, right now it's already going on too long. And I find it amazing that we could shut everything down in 24 to 48 hours, but we've got to create all kinds of think tanks on how to reopen it and all kinds of advisors and this and that. And that's what I worry about is dragging this on. And quite honestly, Congressman, some politicians just, they like the light and they're going to like to drag this on. I hate to say it. I don't know what's in their heart, but that's what my gut is telling me.
Well, you said it very well when you said we managed to full stop one of the best economies in the history of this country in about 48 hours. Full stop. We ran, that's taking a bullet train and running it into the side of a mountain. And that's what we did in about 48 hours. And I don't understand why we're going to have to put together some kind of commission. Think about it. What are they going to do? They're going to say, okay, well, yeah, but we're going to have to pass laws or impose constitutional right restricting guidelines on everyone. If they don't follow the guidelines, what happens? You're seeing people get fined, get arrested, et cetera. This will lead, in my opinion, my humble opinion, to potential further abuse of civil rights. I think we should just say, look, you states, you guys are in charge. You're going to have to accept if you make a bad decision on your economy, you have to take it on states. We're not going to have the federal government bail you out, but we're going to encourage you to open up and just be smart about it. Just open it up and be smart.
All right.
That's what Americans can do.
Yeah, absolutely. People are dying to get back to work. Let's not go further down this. Congressman Biggs, hey, I can tell you I appreciate you holding the line. I know a lot of my listeners do as well. And I think more and more people will come around to that real soon. So hold the line because we have no choice because the road we're going down is so disastrous. So I appreciate it. And I really appreciate the update.
Thanks, Jeff.